Alrighty folks, so we've swapped out the batteries now. Actually, you can feel the power already just through the microphone. Here we are, the camera. Oh, it's up there, is it? Oh, it's up there. We can feel the power just surging through the microphone now that we've updated the batteries to the latest version. And speaking of updating to the latest version, we have a great conversation here about PHP 5.6 lined up. So I'm going to hand over to Jack without any further ado. And in the meantime, folks, if you are interested in giving a lightning talk, remember there is another prize up for grabs. So come and let me know while Jack's talking if you want to do that, and we'll tee it up again. But hand you over to Jack Skinner. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers. Alrighty, so about a month ago today, the latest version of PHP was released, 5.6, and I wanted to run you through a couple of things that you can do to upgrade, what's involved, what's going to break, and a couple of interesting things that I really like about 5.6. So, before I show you that list, can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's already on 5.5? 5.4? 5.3? Okay, you could. I don't mind if you own up to still being on 5.2, on 5.2.
5.16.
Anyone still on 5.16 like me? Yeah, some of my stuff's still on 5.1 as well. So since 5.1, we've removed call time pass by reference. We've got namespaces and late static binding in 5.3. We have traits. I love traits in 5.4, and we've deprecated the MySQL functions. 5.5, I love 5.5. It's got the opcode cache enabled by default and generators. Just a quick show of hands. Who's using generators already? I can see one hand. I just want to show you generators because I love them. Generators look like this. They're a normal function, but they use yield instead of return. And instead of returning one value, they keep running and returning other values. They're like a lightweight iterator of sorts. So here I'm generating some integers between the hex 0 and the hex, well, that's just a color code really. And I yield every single value out of my generator. And Dave, do you have an elephant?
Oh, I wish I had.
Oh. That's a generator there. And so when you're generating lots and lots of data and you don't want to necessarily store that in memory, generators are really cool. Okay, 5.6. The future of PHP is sort of big changes on the horizon. There's a lot of security features in 5.6, a couple of performance improvements, but we get lots of shiny new toys. Okay, that's really fun. Performance benefits in 5.6. So here's a bit of a graph. 5.5 is the green, and 5.6 is purple. A little bit faster, admittedly not hugely so. But looking towards the future of PHP, we've also got hip-hop VM in the red. That's running hacklang, which is a lot faster. It's a re-implementation of the PHP language. And the blue, which seems to be beating everything, is PHP NG, which is being brought into the next major version of PHP, PHP 7. So I won't go into too much detail there because there's a whole other talk about what's coming in PHP 7. But this is roughly where PHP is going in the future. So it's really important to be across that. Now in terms of the raw value we get out of 5.6, these are some rough benchmarks. Now, don't listen to everything you hear with benchmarks. It's really important to get them right. This is some very basic benchmarks that I think this is Lorna Jane put these together, Lorna Jane Mitchell. And she's got a whole blog post on that. I'll add some links on the meetup page about all these benchmarks. But you can see here, as we get more versions, we get more speed. Woo! There we go, yes, Lorna Jane. Excellent. So, as we come to a new version, we're getting rid of some old junk. It's good time for some spring cleaning right about now. HTTP raw post data is gone. Is anyone still using that? Awesome. It's not going to affect anybody. If you really need to access the post data out of a request, you still get access to the PHP input stream, and they've made a whole series of optimizations around that stream that mean you can now upload things greater than 2 gigabytes, things like that. So if it's affecting your code, check out the PHP input stream, and that should solve your problem. Character encoding. The IPv and the MB string sort of modules or extensions are now using the default encoding configuration from PHP INI. They don't use their own sort of subset. Again, this isn't usually a big issue, but it's something to be aware of when you're upgrading. Again, a quick Google brings you to the migration documents on php.net. Arrow key overwriting, but only with class constants. This was not a bug, but kind of a bug, but not really specified. And I'll show you an example of this one. And out of context methods calls. I'm so glad they got rid of this one. I'll show you this as well. So array keys being overwritten. Now, the same piece of code on the left-hand side here, running in 5.5, will overwrite foo. Okay, so we come in and we have index 1, and then bar comes in at index 0, because we integer keys and we start again. And then when we add our third value in there, because that's sort of 0 then 1, it's going to write over the top. But in 5.6, it doesn't do that. And 5.6 to me is a lot more logical, right? It's exactly what you'd expect it to do. We've started the first index in our array at 1, so we logically want to keep counting 2, 3, so on and so forth. That one might catch you out. Again, not all frameworks are going to be using this one, especially because it's only around class constants, but just be mindful of it. Okay, calls from an incompatible context. This is now going to throw, where are we? It's an E-deprecated. It's going to be actually completely removed in a future version. I'm going to work my way backwards through the code here. We're creating a new B object and calling f. Pretty simple. Inside our class B, we've got our function f, and it calls statically A's function f. Now, because I haven't called B's function f statically, it's not in a static context, which means calling A's f function should also not be available. Previously, you could do this. Can't anymore. E-deprecated. Technically, it will still run because of the type of error, but try not to. It's not pretty. Okay, that's it. Everything else works. And because of all the small things that don't work, it's pretty easy to upgrade now. There's nothing blocking you. It's not like we're removing a huge feature of the language. We're ready to go. So what's coming in 5.6? We can now bring in constants and functions from other namespaces. I'll show you this as an example. We have variadics and argument unpacking. I love this. The exponentiation operator. This is kind of cool. It's starting to take things out of function calls and put them into the language for us. GMP operator and resource updates. Now this probably won't be affecting a lot of people, but I do want to cover it briefly and how it's going to affect you. We have some new debugging tools. And there's some security features. Okay, variadics and argument unpacking. This is an entirely new syntax feature. It's never existed in PHP before. I think Ruby has something like this. Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up from our Ruby guru in the back. And it's kind of cool to have it in PHP now. So up in the top corner, I have a variadic. And the thing I want to highlight here is in the function parameters, I have a ... That was a ... for anyone without the microphone. What this now says is that any remaining parameters that are passed into my method, put them in this array. And so when I pass function 1 will go into the param required. 2 will go into opt, but it will default to null. And then 3, or 3 and 4, or 3 and 4 and 5. All of these parameters go into the params array. Really cool, because we used to have to use, I think it was get func args, and it was horrible and a bit messy. Now it's right in the language for us. We can go the other way around. Now this is what I really love. So we have a function that requires 3 parameters, okay, A, B, and C, and I have an array down the bottom here, for anyone up the back that can't read that. I have an array of values, just 2 and 3, and I can actually unpack the values out of that array as I call the method. Now for anyone that likes cool names, we call this the splat operator. I do love PHP's naming. So this is a really cool new thing to functions in 5.6. Exponentials, maths. Quite simple. mostly logical, we now have exponentiation as an operator. Now, the important thing to note here is that it's right associative. So when I run this code, on the top right there, I've got 2 to the power of 3. I have 2 to the power of 3 to the power of 2. Okay, I'll show you this in maths. So down the bottom here, I have the answers. So 2 to the power of 3, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Cool. But you have to work from the right backwards in associativity for these operators. So it's actually, well, 3 to the power of 2 is 9. So this second line is actually saying what is 2 to the power of 9. That's why we get 512. Okay? That threw a few people in the mailing list, if you've been following the PHP internals at all. This is what people settled on when constructing the operator. And there's a lot of arguments. You can go back through all the logic in the mailing list. There's a good archive of it. It's entertaining read. Make sure you have popcorn and a nice glass of wine. Okay, use constants and functions. So in 5.3, we started bringing in namespaces. We can actually bring large sections of our classes under various namespaces and sub-namespaces. But things like constants and functions were stuck within their own namespace. We can now bring them out. So here I have some name slash space, and inside I have a constant foo and a function f. Well, I've got this other namespace. You might call this my root namespace, and I'm now actually bringing in the constants and the functions from my name slash space namespace, and use them as I would normally. Okay. You can also use all the to access them. You could still use the fully qualified namespace, so I can still call that with name slash space slash f. Just like you can clarify the default internal exception class by root namespace exception. But this is a lot cleaner and a lot smoother. So it's really cool to see it in the language now. Right. The GNU multi-precision library. Does anyone use this in your code or actively do anything with it? No? Okay. What it does is it lets us deal with arbitrary precision integers and floating point values. So PHP is still limited by its underlying C types, which only have a certain amount of accuracy in the amount of data they store. GNP takes that and lets us store any level of precision. There's all sorts of good stories about integer overflows, all that sort of great sciencey math stuff behind spaceships exploding. The crux of it is this solves it for PHP. Now, historically, this is all functional. So you have to create a GNP resource within it, and then do your math with the resources with the specific functions. Changed in 5.6 is that you can now use these, for example, the A and the B resources, and just add them as you would logically try to do. Okay, so we have the overloading here. You can see here that historically I'd actually have to call a function. I can now do it in the language code. Mostly. Be very aware that in 5.6, in order to do this, the GNP resources are now objects. Now that probably won't affect many people, but it's important if your framework uses is resource. Okay? Because that will now return false. Just something to be mindful of. Okay, debugging and testing tools coming to 5.6. Now, I hate debugging things, okay? Absolutely hate them. Testing, I love. Unit testing, continuous integration, automation, all that stuff, it's awesome, do it. I've spoken many, many times on it. Come and speak to me if you don't know much about it. I will happily talk all night. But there's some really cool things coming to debugging and testing in 5.6. If anyone would like a link to the tweet that I saw last night on my feed, I'll post a link tonight. But I chuckled. We are getting PHP DBG. Okay, now we already have Xdebug, but PHP DBG is a PHP native debugger that is very similar to GDB if anyone comes from a C background. The intent is that it's native, it's not a change to the Zen core at all, because Xdebug actually reaches into the Zen engine. And we are also getting a new magic method, debuginfo. Now, I'm probably going to use debuginfo a lot more than PHP DBG, at least for now, until the community starts to develop more tools and understanding around PHP DBG. So, debuginfo. It's really cool and it works really simply. I define a brand new method called debuginfo, and I simply return my debugging info. Now, this method will get called whenever I use var_dump. So if you're still stuck using var_dump somewhere, maybe you don't have xdebug installed on your staging server, or hopefully no one's debugging on production, you still can use debug and actually dump out something more valuable. I don't really want to dump out my my raw values. I might know some of the formula that's stable, so I can put that into my my debuginfo, sorry, and let it return out. The result looks like this. We still have our objective type C, but my my debuginfo method's been called, and it's actually returned the squared value. So what's that? 42 squared. I'm so glad I'm not being asked to do mental arithmetic on the spot. Security. Okay, there's some really cool security things coming to 5.6. A lot of them you probably won't have to deal with directly, but it's important to know about. Okay? I'll start from the bottom. OpenSSL and TLS. Now, please, everyone raise your hand. Who's familiar with Heartbleed? The SSL vulnerability? Awesome. Most hands in the room. Brilliant. A lot of the discussions around SSL and improving handshakes, certificate validations, things like that, helped give internals a bit of a kick to really improve a lot of the OpenSSL support. Now, a lot of it's about the individual handshakes and the certificate validation, and there's a change to the default values in some of the methods. But unless you're dealing directly with these extensions, you probably don't have to worry about it too much. Just know that the default values are now a lot better. Okay? Hash equals. Okay, this is an important one. So say, for example, we've got some encrypted value. Any value, really. Preferably a hash not encrypting. I don't want anyone encrypting their credit card details, for example. Previously, we might compare two different hashes like that. And that's pretty fine. You know, if my hashed password is the same as the password that's hashed in the database, then logically it's the same value, right? So this is vulnerable to a collision timing attack. The logic being is that the value returning out of your hash function is slightly slower or slightly faster. An attacker can start to calculate this and make guesses as to what your hash algorithm is, thus getting around things like salts and other sort of security methods we put in there. So what 5.6 introduces is a new method into the hash library, hash equals. And it works really, really simply. I simply ask it the expected value, and I ask it if my other value is correct. Try and make sure that these are the right way around. It's not like an equivalence operator that you can just put it on either side. Because we're using this function, it's specifically designed to get around the timing attacks, so you use it properly. But it is there, and it's really important to know about, because with more and more vulnerabilities coming out today, is anyone across the bash one? That was fun for my sysadmins. Yep. How about the SSL vulnerability with Firefox today? Anyone across that one? Yeah, that one's fun too. My sysadmins had a wonderful day, right? It's really important to be building more and more security mindful software, okay? These are the things you can take into account. Awesome, so I've sold you this brand new thing, but no one can use it because no one else has it installed, right? Wrong. CodeShip has it. This is my choice for continuous integration and delivery, and it's really simple. I sent them a tweet. They said, it's on our list, but maybe not. And about 4 hours later, it was in production. That's how easy it is to deploy, okay? Now, when I get to the end, it's all about PHP end, but the simple thing is, there are lots of services that are starting to bring in 5.6 already, such as Travis CI. Most open source projects are already testing against 5.6, and it's really simple to do. You just add 5.6 into your travis.yaml, and it will build it in the build matrix. Okay? Really simple to get started with PHP 5.6 because these service providers are already supporting it. Heroku supports it. And in fact, they support it so much, and 5.6 is so good, that any new projects, they're actually setting up on 5.6 and not 5.5. Okay, so little changed in terms of backwards incompatibilities that these services are starting to feel confident in shipping you straight onto the latest version, even with your old code. If you've got something else that you're running, you're not sure if it's going to work with 5.6 yet, say your local environment, any other environments, you're not maybe using some of these hosted services. PHP Env is a really cool tool to get started with different PHP versions. The way it works is that you install multiple PHP versions in your environment. You tell them to compile into a given directory, and then PHP Env can come along and you can switch which version you're running. This is really useful. This is what I know CodeShip uses in their example. I know a lot of Bamboo installations will use this for their continuous integration. I know, Dave, you've got an excellent setup with PHP Env there for a lot of your work at Formation. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with PHP Env that you're not restricted by your upstream provider. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
The PHP debugger. Is it possible to have, I couldn't see anywhere where you can have conditional breakpoints, or where you got a running execution, like running request, and halfway through the request it matches a particular condition, then you drop it to a debugger. Is that possible?
I've not explored PHP DBG very much. What you're talking about there is already supported out of the box in Xdebug, and I use that day in, day out, every hour, most minutes. It's really, really useful. So we have a native one coming. What's included in that I haven't explored in too much detail. Again, 5.6 has only been out for about a month. Tomorrow, I think it is. So it's still sort of being explored by the community at large. Not many people are involved in the mailing list for internals, so this stuff is sort of fresh off the press, so to speak. Any other questions? No? That's it? If you do come up with any questions, come and ask me. I don't bite, I do talk, and hopefully I can help you out with it. Thanks.
Alrighty, folks. So, just one moment. Right, okay, so folks, probably a good idea again just to sweep the room. Somebody might have thought they wanted to talk about a project, but maybe just wants to make people aware that there's something going on. So if anybody does have a project that they'd like some people to come up and talk to them about, feel free to raise your hand if you want to see yourself. So did you want to say anything about it just now? Or?
E-learning platform. Anyone interested in PHP, Java, MySQL, mobile development, come and have a chat at the end of the session. Thank you.
Great, so a learning management platform there, folks. Yeah, so if you're interested in getting stuck into that, have a chat with this gentleman over here. Excellent. Okay, fantastic. Now, I have to say that only one person so far has come forward to say, I'd like to do a lightning talk. And that doesn't really make it much of a contest, or
I have a lightning talk there.
Oh yeah, but there's no way you're going to win the prize. That's not because you're not awesome, but it's because it's not fair. All right. But from that point of view, anybody else who wants to get up and say a few words, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, talk about any topic that you have on your mind that you want to share and tell everybody about? I'm going to count down from 10 in my mind, because that's much more entertaining than it is to do it in real life. I just invented a new number right there and you'll never know what it was. Okay. Okay, well,
I won't challenge you for the gift voucher, I promise.
Okay, well, from that point of view then, it sounds like Jack has got something else to say. That's really not surprising, really, but yeah, fantastic.
Surprise!
Surprise! I got words for you. Okay, so Jack, in that case then, if you want to tell us a little bit, that'd be great. And I think this is a topic which is one that everybody needs to hear about. Cheers.
Absolutely. So for anyone that didn't know, last month PHP and Z was a conference. It was awesome. I can see some familiar faces who were there. A few people wanted to go, but a bit too last minute. So I wanted to give you a bit of a forward warning on what's up and coming for PHP, at least the big ones or the local ones. So this weekend we have WordCamp. Tickets are on sale, I think, until tomorrow evening 5 PM. It's going to be awesome. 2-day event. It's at UTS at Sydney, so it's really simple to get to. It's right in the CBD. Anyone that wants to talk about that one, come and have a chat to me. I know Scott has some information about it.
What is it?
WordCamp. It's all about WordPress.
Right.
So it's a 2-day conference. There's 2 different tracks focusing on technical and more blogging and content-related focus. And it's a very welcoming crowd between both of them. So if you're feeling like you want to talk more about content with people, go along. If you want to talk more about plugins and WordPress development, go along. And if you're somewhere in between, it doesn't matter. Go along, meet some cool people. Joomla Day is coming up. Okay, it's a Joomla event, believe it or not. And that's coming up at the beginning of October. So there's a couple of shout outs on Twitter and the meetup group about getting involved in this one. So get involved. ZenCon's coming up. 10th anniversary, birthday. Ollie, I know you're going. Anyone else? Simon's going. Anyone else going to ZenCon? Just the 2 of you.
Anybody wish you were?
Everybody wish they were going. Me. Yeah. So there's going to be some really cool stuff coming out of ZenCon. Anyone that was at Sydphp last week with the special event with Andy, there's some special cool announcements coming out from Zend, officially coming out at ZenCon, so stay tuned. We have OWDC coming up, okay? That's going to be, OWDC, that's up in Queensland, is it not? OWDC.
There's something else.
Yes.
That's web directions. That's
web directions, sorry. We have web directions. So that's coming up, that's always a good event. And OWDC, there's the one I wanted. That's up on the Gold Coast. So I think Ben's involved in that one, isn't he? From Melbourne PHP. Top bloke, awesome hair. And how'd that get in there?
Oh, really?
FunConf is coming up. So let me know if you've got any interests, ideas. It is the 5th birthday, so nothing announced yet, but let me know.
Oh, thanks. Always good to hear what's happening. Very cool. And so from that point of view, some of you guys might also have seen some interesting tweets going out in the last little while from PHP Australia. So there's a very, very good chance we'll be hearing more about that in the weeks and months to come as well. So it sounds like there's a date set in the calendar for 12th, 13th of March. So all very cloak and dagger. There'll be more coming out about that soon.